The following video contains ideas some conservative viewers may find distressing.
What did you say?
Maybe you own a listed building in the UK, or you're thinking about buying one, but it's not big enough, or maybe its layout doesn't suit your lifestyle, and you need to know how to add an extension. But are you going to be forced to design something that's in keeping with the original building, even if that won't suit your needs? The short answer is, it depends. Now, I'm not making this video to upset anyone, but I've had enough negative comments in the past to realize that changes to historic listed buildings or conservation areas in the UK get some people really angry. There is an idea out there that extensions to historic or listed buildings should only be designed using the same materials and methods as the original building, that the extension should imitate the building it's attached to. I'm going to explain why I think that approach could harm our listed buildings if it's applied across the board with no flexibility. If you are passionate about preserving listed buildings, I want you to know that I am too, but I'm coming at the problem from a different angle. There is more than one way to keep old buildings alive, and there should not be a one-size-fits-all solution. The way I do this might not work on your home, and building an extension that's in keeping might not work for my clients. I'm going to explain why. And at the end of the video, if you want to talk to me about extending your home, whether it's listed or not, you can book a consultation with me on the reallifearchitect.co.uk website. There's a link in the description. Most of my work is in Edinburgh, a city with a rich architectural heritage. Many of my projects are in the historic New Town, designed in the 18th century and now a UNESCO World Heritage Site and conservation area. Most of the buildings in this part of Edinburgh are also listed by Historic Environment Scotland. So these properties have the highest category of legal protection in the UK, short of being a scheduled monument. And yet, I was able to build this modern zinc and glass garden room extension in Edinburgh New Town. I'm going to talk about how I did this and why the design differs so much from the building it's attached to. The why matters. If there is one thing to take from this video, it's the why. Because if you want to win a planning application for a modern house extension to a listed building, you need to justify the design to the planners. I don't build this type of thing for the hell of it. There is a reason why this extension looks the way it does. It's not willfulness or attempting to be on trend. Let's start at the beginning. Originally, the townhouse was a private home, but it spent the second half of the 20th century as the office for a law firm, and they sold off the lower two floors as a double basement to my client in 2016. The property didn't have much going for it, except the large rear garden. Private outdoor space is rare in central Edinburgh, and this property had it. The problem is the basement was not designed to take advantage of that garden. Back when this was built in 1830, the basement was used by the servants to prepare food. This was not a high-status part of the building. The garden was used for drying clothes and growing herbs for the kitchen. It was not seen as the focus of the building or a place for entertaining guests. They even put bars on the windows. Fast forward to the 21st century, and my client wanted to make this the center of their home. The floor above would have all the bedrooms, and this level would house the kitchen, living, and dining spaces. In today's world, we use our homes very differently to the society that built this house 2 centuries ago. Most of my clients are wealthy, but none of them have servants living with them. Instead, they all want the kitchen to be the center of family life, the space where they entertain guests and spend most of their time. And that's the big problem. The original design of this property was built for a world that no longer exists, and the things people actually need in their homes are not easily achieved with the existing layout. The big idea for this garden room was to maximize natural light. We wanted the living area as close to the garden as possible, with the dining and kitchen area just inside. To get natural light that far back into the building, the extension would need a massive amount of glass. Now, there's no use arguing that traditional timber sliding sash windows would be more suitable because, in this case, they just wouldn't have the same effect. The roof overhangs the glazing to give the occupants shelter and privacy. Just look at the number of windows on the neighbouring properties that could peer inside the new living area. We chose zinc because it's both high quality and low maintenance. It also contrasts very clearly with the existing stone. The garden room is also down a few steps from the kitchen dining space. This helps bring the living area closer to the garden level, which is steeply sloping. It also allows the floor to ceiling height in the garden room to be 3 meters tall without having to raise the roof to achieve it. Splitting levels in an open plan space also helps make the different areas feel distinct while still being in the same space. In this case, you can sit in the living room and not notice the dirty dishes in the sink. When we started the project, we decided to insulate the kitchen floor, and we lifted the existing flagstones to do that, but we reused those flagstones in the new patio paving. The glazing was by Sunflex UK, who sponsored this channel. The patio doors are 3 meters tall, which is the limit of what is technically feasible. Even though this was built in 2017, Sunflex are so proud of this project, they put it on the front cover of their 2023 brochure. I've used their products on several of my projects, including this house extension to an Edwardian villa in Edinburgh. This extension was more sympathetic to the original house because that approach worked for this client's lifestyle. Sunflex helped me produce this bespoke corner sliding pocket door that disappears into the wall when open. Check out the video I made which goes into lots of detail, including the cost. There's a link up here and also in the description. You can see from that project that I'm not inflexible as an architect. Sometimes using the same materials as the existing house is the way to go, and sometimes not. And by now you're probably wondering how I got planning permission for such a modern extension to a listed building. Edinburgh Council Planning Department have detailed guidance for house extensions to listed buildings. Their guidance tells you how they see things. It is usually acceptable for an addition to be different and distinguishable from the existing building in terms of design. The use of high quality materials which complement the main building will be required. The planners in Edinburgh, like many other places with listed buildings, do not expect extensions to be exact copies of the original style. If that is what you want for your home, fine, no one will stop you. But if a traditional extension doesn't work, you can design a modern contemporary extension provided it uses high quality materials. Let's ask ourselves, what would happen if owners of listed buildings were not given that choice and extensions had to be in keeping with the original design? To answer this, we need to be honest about the kind of people who buy historic listed buildings to live in as private homes. In my experience, it tends to be people who are richer than average. These properties are rare and they are status symbols. That means competition for them is fierce and that drives up the price. Being rich gives people choices. If they feel they can't get what they want from a property, they will take their money elsewhere. If the system won't allow them to have the home they desire, they won't bother living in a listed building. In the long run, that means historic properties won't receive the investment they need to keep them going. You might think I'm speculating, but I'm not. Here's why. Remember when I said my client bought this property from a law firm who had occupied it for decades? Why did that happen? The townhouse was originally built as a family home. Why did that change? The answer lies in the inheritance tax regime UK governments had in the mid-20th century. Large homes across the country were subject to rates as high as 85%, making it almost impossible for families to transfer those properties to the next generation. Many of them were sold off, and those that weren't were inherited by people who didn't have the money to look after them properly after paying those sky-high taxes. Many of these grand old townhouses in Edinburgh were taken over by commercial firms and used as offices. That's fine and well, but they seldom showed the building any love, and they usually did the minimum to keep up with repairs. I've run my own architecture practice in Edinburgh since 2009, and I've worked on dozens of old properties that have been allowed to rot from lack of investment. They look great on the outside, but dig a little deeper, and many are in a sorry state, all because government policy didn't encourage investment in the fabric of our historic buildings. The listed system exists to protect historic buildings, but it won't work if it tries to preserve them exactly as they are. It's a paradox, but in order to preserve historic buildings, we need to allow them to change. The most destructive thing for an old building is to be unoccupied. We need to be able to alter the internal layout and add innovative modern extensions to these properties to make them work for today's families. If we don't, then we run the risk of scaring off people with the means to look after these old properties. At the same time, any alteration or extension to a listed building must make sense. It must be justified, and the best way to do that is to appeal to how the occupants live, how they need to change the building in order to use it for modern life. Keep in mind that changes to the inner layout or a new extension to a listed building will need a listed building approval, as well as a planning application, and it is a criminal offence to carry out work to a listed building without the required consent. If you are thinking about a project like this, you can book a consultation with me on the reallifearchitect.co.uk website. I've put a link in the description, and I've also put a link up here to a playlist of consultations I've done for other UK homeowners, so check it out. My name is Neil, and I am a real-life architect in the UK. I regularly make videos about altering and extending private homes, as well as issues affecting the construction industry and the architecture profession. If that sounds interesting, subscribe to the channel and keep up to date.